Dear chess friends, dear ChessMood family, I'm Grandmaster Johan Hellsten, and today I'm pleased to share with you another interesting topic, a mighty queen. Here we're playing with the white pieces. It's easy to see that white has the more active position, and also we can spot a long-term weakness in black's camp, the pawn on e6. However, it's less evident which will be the correct way to progress here. How can white increase his advantage? At this moment, please pause your video and try to find a good strategical plan for white. Okay, I will continue. In the first place, a very tempting move would be here rook c7, seizing the 7th rank. However, black could react by rook f8, creating some counterplay along the f-file, and if white insists with his plan of working on the 7th rank by means of rook e7, preparing to play rook cc7, well, black could then play a very nice move queen f6. Forcing the exchange of queens. And after queen takes f6, rook takes f6, let's say rook cc7, black is just in time to play rook g6, and a drawish endgame has appeared. Definitely white should look for something more promising. Another way to attack the pawn on g7 would be by means of rook g4. And here also, white is creating the threat of queen takes h6. I think that black would play simply king h8 here. However, another idea for him would be to play the same rook f8, the tactical point being that queen takes h6 would now fail to the surprising move rook takes a4, and white cannot take the rook because then he would lose his queen. Another idea that I looked at was to play rook e4 in order to target the pawn on e6. However, again, black could resort to the same idea of swapping queens. By means of queen f5, he's forcing the exchange of queens, and after, let's say, queen takes f5, e takes f5, rook takes e8, rook takes e8, a very drawish rook endgame has appeared on the board. A last idea that I looked at was rook c6. This looks very logical, attacking both the e6 pawn and the b6 pawn at the same time. However, black could again use this nice counterplay move, rook f8. And if we now take on e6 with the rook, that would follow queen d4. He's not only attacking the pawn on f2, but also he's preparing to take on a4 and then rook a2 with counterplay. White could of course take with the queen instead. But then, after queen takes e6, rook takes a6, rook takes a4, it is true that white would win a pawn here by means of rook takes b6. However, after, let's say, rook a2, black would not have any problems holding a draw here. We have pawns only on one flank, so with the rooks on the board, this would be a rather easy draw for black. Tigran Petrosian found a much better solution here. He noticed that actually g6 isn't the best square for the queen in this particular position. The queen should be relocated to a completely different square. In the game, white played queen b1. The idea behind this astonishing retreat is that the queen should be placed on b3. Once on b3, the queen will be ready to attack not only the pawn on b6, but also the pawn on e6. So it will be targeting both black's main weaknesses at the same time. And after that, he will try to see how to organize his rooks. A truly remarkable concept. In the game, black replied with rook eb8, so that the other rook is still eyeing the pawn on a4. White continued with rook b4, starting to put pressure on the b6 pawn. After queen d6, there was first rook d1, so that after queen c6, white is ready to go queen b3. At this point, both the queen on b3 and the rook on b4 are very well placed. It remains to see what to do with the other rook. Black replied with rook b7. It is possible that his best choice here would actually have been the active move rook f8. In this way, after rook takes b6, queen takes f4, queen takes e6, white would win a pawn, but after king h8, there are only pawns on one flank, so possibly black would be able to hold in this endgame. However, in the game, black didn't want to lose any of his pawns, and he played here rook b7. Here, white played very nice move rook c4. The point is that now the black queen must leave c6, and this means that the white rook will be able to go to d6, a very good square for the rook, where it will attack both black's weaknesses at the same time. After queen e8, it was possible to play here rook d6. However, Petrosian preferred rook e4, seeing that if king f7, Now he could play rook d6, and in this way he's winning a pawn. It's impossible for black to defend his both weaknesses at the same time. So in the game, black instead simply gave up the pawn on e6. He played here rook d7. After rook takes d7, queen takes d7, white, of course, didn't take with the queen. In that case, after queen takes e6, rook takes e6, rook takes a4, rook takes b6, we would have again a drawish endgame, thanks to the fact that there are pawns on one single flank. Black could play something like rook a2, and this wouldn't be too difficult for him to hold. So in the game, Petrosian instead took with a rook. And this means that not only is he working on the weakness on b6, also he can work against the black king. Black cannot take the pawn on a4 in any way. If he takes with a rook, well, he will then lose his queen. And if he takes with a queen, we would have rook e8, and after king h7, I think the easiest path will be queen g8 check, and we pick up finally the rook, and white wins. So in the game, black had to play queen f7 instead. And here, as you can see, white is already a pawn up, and he has a more active position, so he's basically winning here. White played h4. Very good move, starting a new front on the king side. Black cannot take the pawn on a4 due to rook e8, and the queen is lost. So in the game, there followed rook b8, and after h5, rook a8, Petrosian slowly improved his positions on the board. f3, king f8, queen b4, king g8, queen c4, rook f8 and f4. And later on, white went on to win. What we have seen here is that in the initial position, white was struggling to make progress in this position. And the only way to really improve his chances was to relocate the queen. The queen is a very powerful piece, and we should look for the best square on the whole board. In this case, queen b1 is the best choice. And after rook eb8, rook b4, queen d6, rook d1, queen c6, queen b3, the queen was in a perfect place, and white went on to win. At this point, let's have a look at an exercise. Here we are playing with the white pieces. Which do you think would be white's best choice here? Which move do you like for white? You can put your answer in the comment section. Thanks for today. See you next time. Good luck. Thanks for joining the channel, and ChessMood.